All right, Bank of Ireland are proud sponsors of Connacht, Leinster, Munster and Ulster Rugby. Competition is a good thing on and off the pitch, and that's why Bank of Ireland are celebrating those who never stop competing for their club and community. And I'm joined now by a pair of serious competitors, and they just happen to be brother and sister as well. So Sean O'Brien is a Connacht Rugby star. He's captained Ireland at under-20 level in the past as well. And his sister Katie O'Brien, an international rower and a world bronze medalist as well back in 2019. So you're both very welcome. Thanks for taking the call. Sean, I might start with you, and maybe just to explain to people what it's like having someone like Katie as a sister, an elite sports person in the family. Does that bring added competition or added inspiration, or maybe a little bit of both?
Yeah, well, I'm often on the record as saying that Katie is one of the biggest inspirations in my life. She's an absolutely incredible woman, and not only on the back of her incredible sporting career, she was an inspiration to all of us far before that sporting career materialised. She's an incredible person. She's got through a serious amount of hardship in her life and always with a smile on her face. So yeah, it's great to have seen her kind of rise into prosperity through the sporting field and on the back of knowing how great she is. It's been fabulous to see.
And Katie, can you tell people maybe a little bit about your own background and how you came into rowing? I know you tried a couple of different sports before rowing, but maybe talk to people a little bit about spina bifida, what spina bifida is, how it affects your life, and then how sport became a part of your life as well.
Yeah, so spina bifida is something you're born with. It affects your spine, and it depending on the level of where it affects your spine, kind of affects your mobility and function. So I'm quite lucky in that I am able to walk and I can get around fairly easily. A lot of people with spina bifida will be wheelchair bound, so I have to say I'm quite lucky in that way. So yeah, that's spina bifida. And then in terms of getting into sport, we would have been a sporty household, I suppose, always growing up. We would have always been quite competitive, whatever we were doing with horse riding. Sean and Evie, my sister, started with horse riding, and then I kind of followed suit with that. And then I suppose hurling and camogie in school, and a bit of Gaelic, and everything that most Irish kids do growing up. And then I was watching the Olympics with my dad, and I was like, Jesus, I'd absolutely love to do that, Dad. The Paralympics actually, and we were like, right, so because horse riding was my sport, we were like, right, so let's look it up. And there was a sports day up in UCD, so I travelled up to that and went to look at the horse riding, but they only had dressage, which I was looking for a bit more of an adrenaline buzz out of my sport. So then I looked at the other sports and gave the rowing a go on the day, and they asked me back for training camp then about a month later, and that was the start of my rowing career.
Rowing, to any normal person who has maybe tried rowing a small bit in the gym, it's a particularly tough sport. You need a serious bit of upper body strength, clearly. And I'm sure psychologically it's quite a tough sport as well. So when you're in the water, how do you find that? Are you having conversations with yourself? Are you literally distracting yourself, not thinking about what you're doing? Are you just in the moment, stroke by stroke? Or how do you approach rowing? Or is every race, every time you get in the water, a little bit different?
Yeah, so rowing is a lot of mind games, and I spend a lot of my time tricking myself into doing pieces, and I think a lot of rowers do that. I don't know if that's kind of a thing throughout all sports, but you're counting down in your head, and you're breaking up pieces into smaller, manageable, rather than going out and be like, right, I have to go and do 15 kilometers now. You break it down and be like, okay, for this kilometer, I'm going to focus on maybe like a certain part of your technique, and breaking it down like that, and basically tricking your brain into not thinking about the whole big session and breaking things down into smaller, shorter term goals is probably how I approach rowing, and yeah, things like that.
I suppose, Sean, from your perspective, I mean, you've gone from strength to strength with Connacht over the last number of years. In a team sport, I guess, compared to an individual sport like Katie's, it's a little bit different. You can't take a moment out of the game whatsoever in an individual sport, but similarly in a team sport, if you do, you'll be found out fairly quickly. So how do you approach the psychology of a team sport? I'm sure it's quite different to Katie's point of view, but still something you have to think about.
Yeah, well, I'd say strength to strength now is a bit of a push for me over the last couple of years, but yeah, I suppose I'm still there and still trying to do my best for the squad. So the psychology of a team sport, I suppose we're all quite conscious always of not wanting to let the rest of the guys down, and I suppose that's a catalyst for effort in those moments when you're in kind of you're dying physically, and that's something that pushes you through because you don't want to let the rest of the team down. Whereas I suppose Katie is competing for Katie's sake when she's on the rower, so I suppose it's probably a lot more grueling when you lack that side of the motivation.
I mean, you kind of alluded to it there, and you've been fairly unlucky with injuries over the last couple of years. And I know you've shoulder surgery, among others. And when you look at someone like Katie, who's dealt with adversity from a young age, and I've heard you speaking before about, stepping into that dark place and trying to get out of it, especially when you're dealing with injuries. When you have someone like Katie at home to kind of learn off and take inspiration off as well, when you're dealing with injuries, is that an extra help when you have someone so close to you that's dealt with a lot worse than just a regular run-of-the-mill injury?
Yeah, absolutely. I've said it before that Katie is absolutely incredible for just facing up to adversity and just taking it in her stride and taking it and excelling in that adversity. And when I've had to be in a low ebb of my injuries, or I've been having some tough moments where I don't seem like I'm progressing at the rate I would like to have been progressing, and I'm really getting down on myself, it's almost laughable when I look over at Katie and the hardship she's endured with a smile on her face. So it kind of really centers me and makes me realize that it's what I make it. Even if I'm having a bad injury and it's not heading in the right direction, it doesn't mean I need to be down on myself, or it doesn't need to impact my life as in its entirety. So I suppose it's been absolutely fantastic to have that level of maturity that Katie has shown over and over again in her life beside me as an example.
I mean, Katie, from your perspective, some people in your position might consider themselves very unlucky and kind of feel sorry for themselves in some ways and move kind of within themselves and more introverted. But from your point of view, you've had, I think it's over 20 surgeries. I'm sure, multiple hospital visits over the years as well. But one word that it doesn't strike me as one that you would use too often is unlucky. So do you see yourself as unlucky or lucky?
Very lucky, definitely. Very lucky, firstly, in the family that I was given. And like Sean is an outstanding person and someone I feel like that I could go to with any problem, and I feel like he could just solve it. So it's great to have that's Sean, but I also feel like that with my mother and my sister as well. So we're very lucky in the family I was given. And so for me, my disability was just so normalized as a child growing up, and I never really saw it as an issue because of my family and because of the support and because of the love I was given, I didn't really even realize it was an issue or it was a problem or it was abnormal or different from what the norm is. So yeah, I guess having a supportive family and just having that positive environment from a very early age, it never really bothered me. And I just, because it was so normal, it was just my life and that was it. And I just got on with it. And I suppose then having that as something that is, having that at such a young age and it being part of my life just carried on through then. And yeah, I think so.
When you're talking about family, and I know both of you had a very tough time 8 years ago when your father Ian passed away, someone who was heavily involved in sport himself. That must have been an extremely difficult thing to go through. I don't know what your memories of that are, but Katie, but it's clearly something, especially when a parent is so heavily involved in sport and someone you can possibly go to for advice and counsel and little things like that. It must have been quite a difficult thing to go through for you and the whole family.
Definitely. It was and is the hardest thing that I've ever been through in my entire life. I would take a million more surgeries if I could have one more day with my dad. He was the absolute rock of our family. He was the most amazing person, most amazing dad, the most amazing friend, and just someone I looked up to so heavily and still look up to heavily. But yeah, it was definitely a tough time in our life. But like I said, the family I was blessed with, and I'm so lucky to have, we came together, and I'd say we are stronger than we ever were as a family unit. And I don't know if we would be as strong if we didn't lose him. So I suppose there is that small positive in it as well. But yeah, it was a huge loss and very difficult to deal with, and still difficult at times. Yeah.
And I'm sure, Sean, from your perspective, I know your dad Ian was someone who was heavily involved. I think it was in Galwegians rugby club there in the West.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's still, little peppers of advice that you recall him giving you that you still live to by this day, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all still hang on to an awful lot of good advice that Dad gave us. I suppose he played such a seminal role in my development as a human, and also my development as a rugby player growing up. He coached me from when I was 8, 9 up until when I was 17. We won a Galwegians All-Ireland together, which is one of my most cherished memories, and something that I'm so glad that I have. And yeah, it was really, really difficult losing someone who had been so involved in all aspects of her life, and particularly upsetting that he never got to see the fruition of all his efforts in the sporting field for both me and Katie. But yeah, he was a great dad. Sorely missed.
I guess a question for both of you, and the importance of community is something that's mentioned in sport a number of different times. But I know you're both from Clarenbridge there in Galway, and to see two sports people, especially in the one family, achieve what you've both achieved is quite extraordinary. From I guess a small part of Galway as well. How important is that place and community for you, and to see, I guess, Katie, especially your story, get the recognition it deserves, as Sean mentioned. How has it helped that Clarenbridge, probably such a tight knit community, that you've got friends and family and neighbours who are all following both of your journeys in the sporting world?
So how important was it? Is it?
Yeah, I guess from a local perspective, to have those people taking an interest in your own career and have people asking you questions about how you're keeping and how you're getting on in the local area. Oh,
it's brilliant! Like up the bridge, like we love Clarenbridge, and we love coming home. And even when I was away in up in Dublin, like I'd be buzzing driving home, coming home into Clarenbridge, and you'd call into the local shop, and how are you, Mary, or how are you, you'd meet the locals and have a good chat, and your hand would nearly be sore, driving down the road because you're waving at everyone. And like, it's such a lovely, lovely place to live, and everyone is so supportive of everything that we've ever done, even if it was, in school, like we used
community games or something.
Community games, yeah, or the chess tournament. Like, it was nearly as big a deal as Sean going and playing the final of the Pro 14, or Pro 12 at the time. They make a big deal of everything, and they're so supportive of everyone in the village. And it's not just us, it's every child and every adult, and everyone is part of everyone's lives, and they're at the toughest times for us, and they're at the best times for us. So yeah, Clarenbridge is a big part of our lives, and we really love the community here. Yeah.
It's an interesting one as well, that I know, Sean, you're involved in professional sport, but we had Jack McCaffrey speaking on the Bernard Brogan podcast and Off the Ball very recently, and I guess involved in an amateur sport in GEA, but still an elite athlete, and someone who left the Dublin panel with a number of other plates to spin in his life. He was practicing medicine and still learning the ropes in that field. So, Katie, if I'm not mistaken, you're involved in veterinary, and how do you find balancing all those things in your life? Like, clearly your studies, your work, your sport, and everything else, dealing with relationships, family relationships, and otherwise. I mean, is that a tough thing for you at times?
Yeah, balance. It's a balancing act, and sometimes the balance doesn't quite work out either. So it's definitely something that I had to work on a lot. I'm lucky at the moment that I'm now kind of full-time training, so I can really just focus in on the rowing, which is great. But definitely last year I struggled at times, and I often felt like I wasn't giving my best and full attention to one or the other, that something was kind of missing out at times. But really for me, I think the most important thing was organization, and having allocated times and planning your days and planning your time really, really well. And that kind of allows you to do both and to do everything that you want. Because I actually heard someone say recently, Africa, actually, she's another rower, that the times when you're rowing, it's often early in the morning or late in the evening. So that time really wouldn't be spent doing much else. So you may as well be rowing. So yeah, I think that was a nice way to put it. So you can fit it in if you want, and if it's something you really want to do, I think there's always time for it.
What's your ambitions then for the next year? I know the Tokyo Paralympics were obviously postponed until next year because of the pandemic, but is your hope to be there next year? And I know you've been looking for a double sculls partner as well. Are you any further along in that pursuit?
Yeah, so there's one or two guys now on the horizon. For a doubles partner, for me, it has to be a male. So it halves the population, which makes things a little bit harder. And it's a very specific disability that they have to have, which is also making things difficult to find someone. But yeah, they are looking at a few guys now at the moment. So hopefully something comes of that. And my plan would then be to go on and compete in the qualification regatta in May and qualify both for Tokyo 2021. So the extra year because of COVID was actually a blessing for me, really.
Well, listen, guys, the best of luck in all of your endeavours over the next little while. I should mention before we leave, Bank of Ireland are sponsoring the competing provinces of Connacht, Leinster, Munster and Ulster Rugby because competition's a good thing. It fuels rugby in Ireland, connects our communities, and that's why they're celebrating those who never stop competing. So Sean O'Brien, Connacht rugby star, and Katie O'Brien, Irish rower and world medalist as well. Thank you both for your time, and up the bridge, I guess we should end on.
The bridge.
Up the bridge.
The price of real estate in Claren Bridge and a rocket now.
Yeah.